Hello, everyone. I hope you are all doing well. If you are new to the channel, my name is Alfred Cromwell, and I am the founder and president of City Tutoring. And we are a pure math academy, but we also teach other subjects as well. And to the gentleman who said to me to link the other channel where there are courses, actual pure math only courses, I've linked the description and the channel link in the channel description. So thank you for reminding me of that. As you can see, I'm not a tech person, and it's still a learning curve for me, really. But I want to thank each and every one of you who have shown me your support, who have shown your support in the past several days, because I'm going through a very difficult time. I've had to make this improvised office, as you can see. If you look at other videos on this channel, you will see I used to have an office, but now I live in a very old school, house from the early 19th century, and so the plaster is being repaired in many places, and I'm basically, and I've given up a lot of even more of my material possessions. So it's been a very difficult past several days, but I think it's a good thing. And I think I am a Christian, those of you who don't know me, and I really do believe that God is leading me in a direction of less is more, which is something that I've always been preaching, but hadn't really been in a situation of practicing in recent times due to unprecedented prosperity, which I will get to that in another moment. But I'm making this video because so many students, even in the most scholarly of pursuits, you often exhibit a restless zeal for recognition. And this is particularly noticeable here in America. One observes an eagerness to publish, to compete, and to achieve distinction. A drive, not that it's necessarily a bad thing always, but one that carries with it the, I hate to say it this way, but I keep saying it over and over again in my mind. You really have an unmistakable stench of the corporate marketplace. It's the subtle pressure of comparison and the inescapable emphasis upon success as measured by others. And that has not changed, I think. This is not a Gen Z thing. This was very prevalent, arguably more so in my generation, unfortunately. And it is not that you lack necessarily talent or dedication. Well, you haven't been trained properly. That is true. You don't know how to channel the thoughts that you have, but rather that you are socialized into a culture that prizes visibility over reflection, advancement over contemplation, and status over the simple delight in just understanding. And it was during the course of my work recently, in the quietude of my solitude, that a most curious and illuminating observation revealed itself to me, and that I figured I'd share with you all. I'm noticing with increasing fascination that there is a growing number of young mathematicians who devote themselves to the pursuit of pure thought. And I could not help but compare them in my mind to their typically American counterparts, because I have students from a lot of different places. So you should approach your studies with a certain serenity, a deliberate patience, and a profound sense of purpose that is entirely unencumbered by the feverish demands of careerism. If you labor quietly, sometimes even in obscurity, devoted to understanding for its own sake, and you are untroubled by the clamorous applause of peers or the relentless drive for positions and salaries. But really, do not be afraid of being imperceptible, because to pursue clarity of the mind is far more important than any ostentation of accomplishment. And I have always contrasted this with the quiet, almost monastic patience of the students from the past, if you read about them. And it was with that in mind that the seeds of this message took root in my mind. Because in the serene devotion of the former, I encourage you to look back to a model of life that is both proper and restorative, a life that does not bend beneath the weight of hollow ambition, that measures success not by applause but by the depth of insight, and that finds freedom not in climbing ladders but in cultivating the sovereignty of your own mind for greater holy purposes. And it is here in the deliberate, restrained, I say, and I emphasize restrained, pursuit of excellence for its own sake that we begin to glimpse the subtle triumph of being ordinary. A victory concealed from the world, perhaps, and yet infinitely more profound than the hollow accolades that are so widely esteemed. And there is a principle that is too often neglected in our era, that greatness is not conferred by the applause of strangers. You see it on this channel. I've had people who, even people who have dealt with me before, and they come in a very aggressive manner, thinking that I'm going to, in some way, going to be intimidated by their critiques. I had a person recently who left one of the rudest comments that I've seen in a long time. And I don't want to give the person publicity. They know who they are if they're watching. And I told them to get lost because I do not need the applause of anyone. I only need the approval of God. But the idea of greatness is not because of the applause of strangers or the accumulation of wealth. Many of you are pursuing wealth. It doesn't come by the pursuit of lofty titles, but by the courage to live according to your own discernment, to cultivate your mind and spirit without heed to the relentless pressures of comparison or imitation. Worst of all, imitation. But rather to just simply live your life as the person you were made to be by God. And corporations and neoliberal thought proclaim that you must always be striving, climbing, shining, that you must compete. And yet the true victory is to step aside from this spectacle and to embrace a life of deliberate ordinariness, not as defeat, but as triumph. And we should proceed together to examine the peculiar and exquisite advantages that lie hidden in the abandonment of the relentless pursuit of respectability, and to celebrate that quiet, unheralded freedom which the ordinary life so generously affords. And I'm realizing that now. I am simply I've lost most of my material possessions, by the way, recently. In fact, I don't even have pen and paper right now. I'm speaking off the top of my head. But if you allow me to speak at once to your mind, to your reason, and your imagination, and that silent tribunal, court of thought, within each of you that discerns, however faintly, the worth of a life well examined. And we live, it seems to me, in an age that is increasingly enchanted with appearances. Now, there's always been an element of that, absolutely. But I am referring to this whole idea of fake imagery, AI, memes, and a lot of people are bewitched by the glitter of ambition and enthralled to the siren call of distinction. From the moment you take your first steps beyond the nursery of childhood, you are exhorted, at least in the United States, you are, to ascend, to scale the towers of commerce, to cultivate airs of elegance, even if you are not, and to seize whatever ladder the world may extend. I was thinking recently of an anecdote of my childhood about people who try to give off airs of elegance when God did not make them to be elegant. And I remembered an incident with one of my uncles. I don't remember him very well because I was a very young child and I didn't really have a lot of interactions with him. He was a very tall man. And I never forget, though, that he said to someone, he had a way with words. Maybe I take after genetically in some way because I'm also a very honest person, and that has hurt me in life. Although it hasn't hurt me with God, but it has hurt me with other people. And he told a man, he said, "You may wear the most expensive suit in the world, but you still look like a cook. You still look like someone who works as a maid or as a servant of some kind. Now that may not be the kindest thing to say. It's certainly not, but it is the truth. And some people were not made to be elegant, and that's okay. This is what I'm getting at. But when you pause to consider this relentless ascent, you really are perceiving not opportunity, but a mirage. It's not triumph, but a gilded treadmill upon which the soul labors and the spirit, your spirit, withers. And the pursuit of respectability, and it is so praised and so universally inculcated around the world, is really less a path to fulfillment than a gilded cage in which ambition struts with hollow grandeur. So let us not be deceived. The city, this idea of the city, people leaving their towns and going to the cities, it's a vast cathedral of enterprise, of glass and stone and ceaseless illumination. And it promises you reward and yet exacts an unconscionable toll. The streets teem with those who advertise virtue while concealing compromise. The offices, the corporate offices you see echo with the polite laughter of the fake, the insincere. And the windows, gleaming in the noon sun, they reflect not character, but the costumes of conformity. And within those precincts, a man may achieve wealth, applause, and maybe even the recognition of your peers, and yet still find, when you're all alone during the evening, the solitary evening, that your soul has not grown, that your mind remains fettered, that the music of your existence has been silenced by the inexorable demands of status. To climb is to prosper. That's what they tell you. To prosper is to be esteemed. But esteemed is often nothing more than the echo of public expectation. And climbing, when guided solely by the eyes of others, is really the surest path to self subjugation. And so, permit me, if you will, please, to advance a paradox. True liberation lies not in the pursuit of the heights, but in the deliberate, courageous embrace of modesty and silence. If you consider the man who refuses to chase the fabled laurels of the metropolis, who declines the gilded ladder, who spurns the applause of the many in favor of a life constructed upon Christian discernment, is he less noble? Of course not, because in the deliberate rejection of hollow ambition, he preserves the sanctity of his mind and the serenity of his conscience. He cultivates a domain in which the virtues of patience, observation, and taste may flourish untrammeled. It is not mediocrity, as the world falsely names it. A lot of people will say that's mediocrity, you stay in your town. But rather, it is the triumph of wisdom over spectacle, the victory of liberty over imitation. It is the discovery of plenitude where others perceive only limitation. The happiest people I have met are people who stayed in their hometown, who stayed in their lane. And they are also the healthiest people I have met. We used to call them salt of the earth types. And if you reflect upon the character of the ordinary life, and how often have we overlooked its beauty, the beauty of just simply living and being what God made you to be? A lot of people are disturbed when I say that on this channel, but I want to be better than what. No, you are exactly what God made you to be. Stop it. And the quiet grandeur and the unassuming heroism, that is true living. And the laborer who rises at dawn, the scholar who might contemplate beneath the lamp's soft glow. I usually have an oil lamp in the morning. I like it dim. I can't bear very bright electric lights. And the craftsman who fashions with diligence and care, and each embodies a form of courage, unrecognized by those who mistake novelty for merit. Their triumphs are invisible to the impatient eye, and yet they are no less magnificent for their subtlety. The corporate mindset exalts the ostentatious, but the provinces, the towns, the counties, the unheralded abodes of modest enterprise, they shelter the soul and permit it to grow. You are unpressured, unashamed, unobserved. And here, in the refusal to participate in the relentless spectacle of achievement, a man can cultivate independence, moral fortitude, and that serene, if I may say the word, equanimity, which no ladder of marble and glass can confer. And I remember that from my own personal life when I was very young. When I was a very young man, I used to live in a coastal town in Europe, and I would bathe in the ocean almost every day at least until the month of November. Meanwhile, my classmates in the US would be working at JP Morgan and Chase and all these other financial institutions. They were really soulless. They were destroyed people. They made a lot of money, but I have no interest in it. So if you examine for a moment the very notion of ambition, how often do we see young people dispatched into the world with their hearts are on fire, and only to return weary and hollow, their passions drained by the exigencies of approval and pretense. And they are taught that to excel, to conquer, to surpass is the apex of virtue. And yet the apex often proves a lonely precipice. From its dizzying height, the air is thin and the ground below distant. The applause of peers is fleeting, and the admiration of strangers is ephemeral. And in contrast, if you remain near the hearth, if you walk the familiar streets, if you tend to your affairs with diligence and care, and you discover a different order of achievement, a sovereignty over the self, a clarity of purpose, and a life measured not by comparison with strangers, but by the quiet joy of mastery over one's own existence under God. And it is here, in the deliberate cultivation of ordinariness, that greater of a subtler and yet infinitely more profound sort is to be found. I don't want you to mistake my words for counsel to sloth or indolence. Rather, I exhort you toward freedom. Freedom that is understood to be from the tyranny of appearances, from the relentless measurement of self against others, from the corrosive anxiety that accompanies the chase for fame and fortune. To live within one's means, to shape one's time, to pursue interest and knowledge for their own sake, and those are the acts of heroism that are unobserved by the crowds. And to resist the pull of the metropolis with its ceaseless promise and quiet coercion is to affirm that life, when guided by reflection and taste rather than imitation, may be both sufficient and sublime. Consider, if you will, think of the life of the city dweller that you know. That you rise, you start work, you observe ceaseless rules of all sorts of decorum, and they endure the commerce and the businesses, the corporations, and ultimately returns to a dwelling. Maybe they are furnished with the trophies of conformity. But compare that to the life of the one who declines this path. Rising, you rise with the day whenever you want. You tend to honest work, of course, reading, conversing, being around people you know, observing the seasons, if you have seasons in your area, cultivating friendships untroubled by rank or reputation. It might be less conspicuous, but you experience the reality of existence in its plenitude. Your mind is unshackled, your spirit is nourished, and you partake in a form of victory that is inaccessible to those entrapped by the glittering machinery of social ambition. And it is, in truth, a triumph that is, to me at least, far superior to any conferred by the hollow ceremonies of status. So let us extend now our reflection. What about the moral texture of society? Um, we have a relentless pursuit of distinction, and it breeds envy, resentment, and a brittle civility because you are ever compelled to appear greater than you are, to outshine, to compare, to perform. Some of you think of yourselves as far too important than what you really are. I'm the only person on YouTube telling you the truth. A lot of YouTubers will tell you that you're a wonderful human being. I make no such pretense. Most of us are rather unremarkable people. But the cultivation of moderation, of simplicity, and it permits you to dwell in the truth, which is the most important thing. Your heart is unencumbered, the conscience unburdened, and the life attains a harmony that is denied to those perpetually in competition. It is a harmony not of spectacle, but of substance. It's not mimicry, but authenticity. It's not ambition, but the serene and dignified sufficiency. And so you need to take heed. You need to stop rejoicing in the allure of ambition, in the glitter of titles, or in the fleeting applause of strangers. Who cares what strangers have to say about you? You have to rejoice rather in the sovereignty of choice under God, in the freedom to shape your days, and the cultivation of character that is untainted by comparison. If you are ordinary, modest, and you are deliberate in your rejection of ostentation, these are not failures but triumphs. They constitute a form of excellence reserved um, for those who are, I would say, courageous enough to renounce the hollow measures of the world, to step aside from the ladder, and to claim dominion over your own existence. It is a heroism concealed from the impatient eye, but it's no less magnificent for its subtlety. So let the cities retain the ambitious, the ladders, the offices, the ceremonies, and the applause. They can persist in the pursuit of grandeur, in the worship of distinction, and the endless measurement of worth by the eyes of others. But you shall walk, I want you to walk a different path. One of being deliberately ordinary, being what you are, who you are, of principled freedom and of quiet triumph. And in this seemingly, you might have an unremarkable life, but there lies the most profound of all victories, the freedom to think, to observe, to act, and to exist without the perpetual coercion of expectation. In the embrace of the modest, in the cultivation of sufficiency, and the rejection of the spectacle, you will discover the truest grandeur of all, the sovereignty of the self, the dignity of authenticity, and the joy of living wholly, freely, and with the wisdom that the world cannot confer, but that you may claim for yourself. That's why I told someone yesterday, a longtime commenter on this channel, to get lost. I don't need them. They can get lost. They don't like the channel. You don't like the channel. I don't need you. I've been around longer than you, probably. Most of my audience is under the age of 30. I existed before you, and I can exist after you as well. I will continue to follow the mission that I've always had on this channel. So take courage. Don't abandon your curiosity, but don't abandon your judgment or your discernment. You need to abandon only the illusion of grandeur, the tyranny of appearances, and the pursuit of admiration. That's hollow. And it is not poverty, it is not cowardice, it is not retreat. It is the most audacious of enterprises because it is the quiet assertion of your independence. It is the rebellion against falsehood and the attainment of freedom that is always above any spire of ambition. If you walk this path, and you shall find yourself in the end, you will be richer than any man who measures his life by coins, applause, or gilded titles. You walk it with pride, with clarity, and with the unshakable conviction that in the deliberate embrace of the ordinary lies the truest, loftiest, and most enduring victory that a human being can claim. So stay in your lane, be happy, and do not trash the work of others. Do your own thing.